Hey, hello, and welcome to the Green Stocking Society. My name is Shara, and I'm a philosophy grad, and I work in sustainable fashion. And today we are going to be taking a little bit of philosophy and sprinkling it onto some juicy David Attenborough drama to create a delicious cocktail. So everyone grab your metal straw, this thing is about to be shaken and stirred. 41% of species in the UK have declined since the 1970s. In fact, Britain has lost more of its natural biodiversity than almost anywhere else in Western Europe, and the most out of all the G7 nations. Researchers from the London History Museum are finding that the UK is consistently in the bottom 10% when it comes to biodiversity intactness. In 2018, ministers agreed to a 25-year plan to protect the UK's natural environments, but it's actually been found that so far they are off track on 23 of those targets. Some of the most endangered species here in Britain include animals like turtle doves, otters, red squirrels, hedgehogs and bats. According to a 2022 survey, 4 out of 5 British adults actually support rewilding, and 75% of people think that politicians should be doing more to reverse the decline of nature. So it looks like people are waking up to the fact that tackling the climate crisis has to be about more than just the right way to recycle your pizza boxes. There's got to be some kind of governmental policy change involved. So Why Oh Why is an episode of David Attenborough's latest documentary about the state of wildlife in Britain not being aired on TV by the BBC for fear of right-wing backlash. Attenborough's latest documentary, Wild Isles, is going to explore the beauty of the British Isles, and it's made up of 5 episodes, with a 6th episode going to be uploaded only to iPlayer and not broadcast on TV. The 6th episode, which is only going to be available on iPlayer, is the one that actually looks at the causes of this decline and why it is that our wildlife is declining so rapidly. The BBC has denied this, saying that that 6th episode is actually not part of the series, it's a separate film, which even if it was, why would they not broadcast it on TV? I mean, David Attenborough documentaries must have really good ratings, so I don't see why they would choose to not show it on TV, even if it was a separate thing. Nevertheless, senior sources who were working on the programme at the BBC have said that actually it was due to fear of right-wing backlash that that episode is not going to be aired on TV. Basically, the BBC doesn't want to make a documentary about nature become too political. This is particularly interesting to me because in the past, David Attenborough has had backlash for not actually talking enough about climate change in his documentaries, which he defends by saying that it just, in his opinion, turns people off from actually engaging with nature and coming to appreciate nature in a way that is then going to motivate them to act to save it. But here's the thing, choosing silence or choosing not to expose as many people as possible to the harsh realities of the problems that we're all facing as individuals, as communities, and as societies is inherently political. It's political because at this point, not doing everything we can to combat the climate crisis is going to lead to a lot more suffering for a lot more people. Laura Howard, who produced the programme and also used to work at the BBC's Natural History Unit, has said that there's nothing political to her about giving the facts on nature. So she says that it is undeniable. We are incredibly nature depleted, and I don't think that that is political. I think it's just facts. Amen, Laura. Hit the like button if you agree with Laura. Every move, every policy, every decision that we don't take now in support of biodiversity, in support of renewable energy, and against opening new coal mines, and against the use of single-use plastic is just kicking the can further down the road and delaying the inevitable and making it worse when it happens. It's simply not enough to come up with a 25-year plan and set targets. Those promises need to actually be adhered to, and we need to hold those people making those promises accountable for those promises and not accept anything less than a 100% commitment. We won't be able to keep having corporations and brands and governments just keep setting these targets for 2025 or like 5 years time and 20 years time. And then when it gets to 20 years time, they realize, oh, we haven't actually done anything. So let's set another goal for another 20 years. We can't keep doing that forever. Actually, we can't keep doing it for more than a couple more decades. By choosing not to raise as much awareness as you possibly can with a program like this, especially when you have the backing of these massive players like David Attenborough, who is a national treasure, as well as WWF and RSPB, who also worked closely with the program on the documentary, when you have this great resource and you are choosing to bury it, you are choosing to bury a story that could have a real impact on how people vote and what they buy and the decisions that they support in the future. Choosing to report on one thing is often choosing to not report on something else in that same slot, and that decision cannot be trivial. It shouldn't come down to just what journalists and broadcasters think that their audience want to hear. The facts are the facts. Like, facts should not be political. We can turn to philosophy, specifically epistemology, the study of knowledge, to better understand what's going on here. So here we're going to focus on social epistemology, which is all about looking at how knowledge is transferred between people and how it is withheld and why it is withheld and the consequences of that. There are loads of interesting things within social epistemology that I could be talking about, but here we're going to focus on ignorance, specifically intentional ignorance. According to one of the favourite lecturers from my philosophy master's days, Daniel DeNicola, here are 5 types of intentional ignorance. Some of them describe how we choose to be ignorant about things ourselves, but then other types of intentional ignorance also describe how we enforce that ignorance on other people as well and make them ignorant. The first is rational ignorance. This is when you decide that the effort it takes to learn something is not actually worth the benefit of knowing that thing. So we make decisions like this every day. For example, clicking agree on some terms and conditions that you haven't read. This is a really necessary form of ignorance because we can't know and learn everything. So we have to make some decisions about what things we're going to focus on and things that we're actually going to commit to learning about. The second is strategic ignorance, when you decide that it's better not to know something. So for example, a politician being able to claim plausible deniability because they never found out about something intentionally, or it could just be that you only look at reviews for a film that don't include any spoilers because you don't want to see the spoilers before you watch the film, so you're keeping that knowledge from yourself. Willful ignorance is when someone persistently ignores evidence and authorities that would tell them certain things that would clash with existing evidence that they've already accepted and beliefs that they already live by. So a good example of this is when people who eat meat say like, oh, don't tell me about the meat industry, don't tell me about the dairy industry, because that will really make me go off my bacon and I really want to continue eating bacon. Then there's also ignorance for privacy, confidentiality, and secrecy. And this is where we get into imposing ignorance on someone else. So these are the types of ignorance when you are deliberately withholding information or lying or deceiving someone, whether it is to protect them or to protect yourself. When you lie to someone, you are making sure that they remain ignorant about something, like they don't get a choice in that. The fifth type of intentional ignorance is forbidden knowledge. So that's upholding taboos, censorship, and preventing people from being able to access information. So for example, when certain books aren't allowed in certain schools. Cases like this with the BBC and them choosing to not air David Attenborough's episode about the causes of nature decline is just another example of organizations and corporations and governments intentionally keeping you ignorant. And they are sending the message that willful ignorance around the climate crisis is okay and it's acceptable. People might already be willfully ignorant about the climate crisis because when you actually accept all of the information about what it will take to change our societies to be much more sustainable and to be able to reverse the effects of the climate crisis, you then realize that a lot of the ways that we live and that we feel comfortable living our everyday lives would have to change. So flying less or eating less meat or like thinking more about where you shop, things like this that we're all in sort of our comfortable habits about, these are the things that we would have to change, and we don't want to change those. We don't want to give up these ways of living, so obviously we're not going to actively seek out this knowledge that contradicts how we should live our lives and how we're currently living our lives. No one is inclined to seek out knowledge that proves them wrong and completely contradicts everything that they enjoy about life. No one wants to be told that they're wrong and to have to then adjust their entire way of life around like a new belief system. Sources of knowledge like the BBC are using secrecy and deception to bury knowledge that should be out in the open. There's a lot of talk these days about fake news and misinformation, but what's just as dangerous is the stuff that is simply not shared at all. We also see this in like the fashion industry and in the food industry, where information about where the things that we buy come from is actively withheld, because if we had that information then we would stop buying those products. It's in the interests of advertisers to show you happy cows grazing on beautiful green fields when they're promoting beef, or it's in the interests of Shein to never talk about their garment workers or talk about transparency or traceability, because that's going to stop you from buying the stuff that they're selling. So with Shein, for example, instead of talking about their supply chain, instead of talking about the garment workers that make their clothes, or instead of talking about the materials that their clothes are made from, they will just focus on like the colour and the fit and how this thing that they've made is supposed to make you feel when you wear it. And unfortunately, it's just so much easier for us as consumers of products and of content to give into this and to just think, well, I haven't been exposed to it, so it's not my responsibility. I'm of the opinion that with great knowledge comes great responsibility. If you are seen as a source of authority and a source of knowledge like the BBC is, or you have some kind of cultural capital, some kind of cultural power, then it is your responsibility to think about the information that you are putting out there. If you are spreading misinformation, or if you are actively withholding information that is harmful for people or other living things, then you are doing it wrong. That said, it's clear that some of these sources are not going to be giving us the information that we want, and they're not going to be holding themselves to that standard, which just means that we might just have to start trying a bit harder to seek out that information for ourselves and to find out, first of all, what we don't know, but then also what we don't know we don't know. And we need to fight for everyone's right to know about the things that will impact their children's lives and their grandchildren's lives in innumerable ways. Otherwise, how are we supposed to make any informed decisions about our future? Without information, without knowledge, you can't empower people. So in a nutshell, when that episode of Wild Owls comes out, make sure to watch it and share it and write about it and talk about it. And if you want to see some more of these videos where I apply philosophical concepts to current events and things that we've all been thinking about, then do let me know in the comments. Let me know what else you want to see me apply topics like ignorance to, so that we can kind of unpack these things together. And I'd also really appreciate it if you could give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. It would really help me out, and it will also help us to spread these conversations and open them up with even more people online. Alright, that's it for this video. Stay kind, and I'll see you next time. Bye!